Hello, everyone. I am Lynn, Dream Girl Writer, coming to you today in my new place in Cambria, California, where I just moved from across the country in Lexington, South Carolina, came here with 4 suitcases and a duffel bag, and it has been a very liberating process, as well as a very kind of uh, penetrating process, for want of a better word. It's like it has come and been embodied in my bones instead of in my writing or in my dreams, as usually the wisdom comes to me. And let me clarify that I certainly have had a lot of dreams during this process. And I started about a month ago by letting go of everything, moving out of my place in Lexington, moving into a temporary place there until I could divest myself of all of my belongings, and then coming by plane to my daughter's house in Southern California to stay with her for about 5 days before I came to my final resting place here in Cambria. And during that time, of course, as you well know, through any moving transition, there's a lot of things that come up that, even though you've planned for all the changes that you think you will have to make, or all the things that you think you will have to do during the transition, there's always more in something new. And I felt like during those unexpected changes that I was inviting them in more as serendipitous gifts, rather than, oh my, here comes another change. Oh, how am I going to deal with this? Or do I have enough money for this? Or whatever. And it's been very liberating, first of all, to leave all of my possessions behind and to come here to an apartment, an unfurnished apartment. And as you can see, I have one chair behind me, and there's really only one other chair in the living room. And I have some lanai furniture out on my porch right outside, and I have a bed. But it's down to the basics. And yet I feel like it's just an opportunity to kind of do myself over, to have a do-over, to have start over, in terms of like, okay, this is a new chapter. What am I going to do with this new chapter? How shall I bring forth more of myself? How can I serve the greatest good, share my gifts in a more complete way than I did before? And along the way, I have found so many gifts in these unexpected events, and have found that they have led to more understanding or more healing within my relationships. And it's almost like by the time I was settled in with the necessities, and a friend had visited me right after I moved here, and I was embracing, her being here, with taking her on walks and making sure that she saw all the wonderful things of this place. And after all that, to kind of settle into the ordinary of it, the ordinariness of it, and to get myself back into my rhythm, my natural rhythm, I had a moment where it felt boring, or it felt like, what now? Now, now it's all up to me. And it's that blank slate thing. Some people experience it as like a writer's block, like, ooh, I have my assignment. I mean, I'm here. I do know why I'm here. I know why I chose to be here. I'm looking to connect more with my local community, and also to be able to share my gifts one-on-one personally with people, instead of just online or through technology or through publication of my books. And so that moment brought up for me the power of pause and the power of surrender. And it also brought up for me some fears like, oh my gosh, did I do the right thing? Am I going to be happy here? Is this really what I wanted? Or was I just looking to get away from my last situation? And while I know in my heart that would never be true, that couldn't possibly be the reason. My mind was, of course, bringing up all these background anxieties. And so, I took those as an opportunity to go a little deeper and say, okay, well, you've been planning this since January and you're here and it's September. Well, now it's October. But, you took 9 months to think this through, to plan for it, to get everything in order, to be able to make it financially. And now you're doubting yourself. So let's look at those doubts and see what they really are. And it's just, kind of the flutterings of anxiety that you get. You can be deeply grounded. And I say this from personal experience where when push comes to shove and the rubber meets the road and somebody's having a crisis in front of me or I'm having a crisis, I just, for me, it's like that automatic response. When the going gets rough, the tough gets still. I just find my peace and find my center. But it's those times when everything is all right, but maybe it's a little quieter than you like, or, everybody's gone home and the party's over and now you've done this big thing and you've gotten all the kudos and support from your family and friends, but then it's like, well, here I am all alone. So now what's next? And I embraced it this time as a beautiful thing, as a reminder that our power lies in being in present time. Our wisdom can only come from present time. And it is often like working behind the scenes, like flowing and undulating inside of us and percolating, through our thoughts and relationships and events that are happening in our life where we're unable to articulate it maybe, or we're unable to put our finger on what makes us feel good or what makes us anxious. But at the same time, it's unnecessary to do that. It's just going with the flow, just being in present time. And when those anxieties come up, to take that opportunity to look at them and say, hello, I see you, I hear you, so let's have a talk, and I say that facetiously, but I often do talk to myself. And one of the most powerful things that I found in clearing my shadows was when I talked to that nagging voice in my head and said, okay, I hear you. You think the worst is going to happen here. And this was way back, so I'm not speaking of this transition particularly, but in another financial crisis that I was facing a couple of years ago, and just had it out, so to speak, conversationally, if you will, with my spirit, or my spirit was talking to the fears that that came from my mental constructs that were trying to upset things and make something wrong so that something had to be fixed. And during this transition, that came up a lot less than it ever has before, but I made it a point that when it did come up, I made it a point to really respect it, to really respect that part of myself that actually could have a point. a lot of times we'll plan something for so long that we forget our original intent. And when that nagging voice came up and said, did you really do the right thing to leave your family in South Carolina and come here where, yes, it's a beautiful place, yes, you feel like it's home, but you don't have that one-on-one yet with that you did with your family members, and you're out of your comfort zone. You have to make new friends, and I answered back to myself, yes, I did do the right thing, because my original intent in coming here was to create more community for myself, was to have more of a sharing on a one-to-one personal basis rather than just having an online community or a kind of digital experience, a remote experience with people, which is very valuable in this day and age. And I treasure the fact that we can do that. But at the same time, I came here to this small community, this small town, which has an abundance of nature to commune with. I came here for that reason, to commune with people and nature, to put people first, to be in front of somebody and have conversations about anything, whether it's spiritually minded or whether it's just everyday average conversations. And I share this with you, again, calling it looking through the lens of true love, because true love is what makes us centered within ourselves, the true love of ourself, to honor ourselves, to really know and respect what's going on inside of us, including those nagging voices of doubts, including those fears that you thought you dealt with already, including other people's issues that are possibly getting mixed up with yours, as well as to just breathe. Take in where you are. Look around you at the myriad of opportunities you have. And I'm saying this with surety that whoever you are, wherever you are, there are opportunities to see love. And if we look through everything with the tint of love, rose-colored glasses, if you will, but spiritually backed, soul-centered, rose-colored glasses, if we use that lens, then everything that we see and all the changes that we may be going through, even if we brought those on ourselves, can be modified and filtered through that. And, there were times during this transition, this moving transition, where I went days without really writing anything. And in fact, after coming to this home, I have taken to writing longhand in my journal, my dreams and my daily journaling, instead of on my computer, where it's much easier to edit and I can get so much more done. And yet that longhand process, even though at first I was feeling like, this may be something that I can only do for a short period of time, because I want to be able to write more books and do a faster editing process and that sort of thing. But at the same time, for this moment in time, that longhand writing was a type of embodiment that I really needed to ground me again in this new place with these new things happening and these changes and a bare bones household, and having to have the patience to wait for the right things to come to me and my finances to settle so that I can start buying things for my home and buying things besides just the necessities. And that longhand process, which seemed like maybe a step backwards in terms of my writing process, was exactly what I needed. And to look at that through the lens of love, to look at that through the lens of self-care, to really be centered enough and patient enough with myself to say, well, this is what's happening, and this is actually the best thing that I can do for myself at this moment in time. So I'm going to allow it and maybe even embrace it as I go along, because maybe I do need to make some of my writing time longhand writing time, for that to go through my fingers, for it to come through my brain and into my fingers. I need that. And maybe that's exactly what I needed at that moment in time to feel more at home, because it's coming from my mind into my body and being integrated better. So I hope there's some worth to you in my ramblings. And I really did want to impart to you the beauty of honoring your transitions. And I know a lot of life-changing transitions, like losing a job or losing a loved one, or entering into a new relationship, or moving across country, or moving a long ways away, and being out of your comfort zone. All of those things can be quite unsettling, and we can get into kind of a loop of fear or anxiety, if you will. So I hope that I can offer you a little tidbit of wisdom that can go along with that you can remember the power of pausing. You can remember that we are really spiritual beings, that our natural state is presence and joy and love and peace. And regardless of what's going on around us, even if there's a screaming child in our house, there is a way to capture a little bit of presence, to take that one moment to breathe 3 times, 3 breaths, and let the child carry on as they will, and as long as they're safe, of course. And then when you do go to them to address the problem, you'll have that little piece of peace, that little bit more of centeredness. And we all experience these things, even in our everyday lives, when there are hardly any changes going on, that we're just going through the, routine, the drumming or the doldrums, the dull routine of our lives. That there are more causes for pause in that as well. To breathe some inspiration into it, to breathe some fresh changes into it, perhaps, in order to uplift ourselves from that sameness, that dullness, that broken record of our lives. So I hope I have given you some food for thought and some nourishment for your soul. And I thank you for listening, and I encourage you to try and use that lens of true love on yourself and others at all times, regardless of what happens or what fails to happen. Thank you for listening, and may you have tons of love in your life. Bye for now.